G'day, fans, and welcome back to the first episode of good old DNA Reviews for 2023. How exciting is this? We haven't been on the air for at least 3 months, so we're completely out of practice. And as far as I'm concerned, my focus is just remembering on what buttons to push. I might get some of them wrong, but one button I do know how to push is Aaron's button. So how you going, old son?
You're always pushing my buttons. I'm going good. It's good to be back. First one for the year. How are you?
Oh, I'm plodding along quite nicely. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. It's the old Mandalorian, which is very, very groovy. But before we get stuck into that, for those people who are watching us for the first time or are a bit out of touch with what's going on, we've been doing DNA reviews since last year, covering off different TV shows and a couple of movies. For those who are interested in seeing what we have done in the past, you can go to our website at Sci-Fi Zone. Don't forget the hyphen between Sci and Fi to check out previous episodes where we analyse a certain series in great detail. So if you haven't done that, be sure to do so. But don't do it right now, obviously, because we're on board right now. So, Mr. Aaron, we are talking about the all first episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian. Now, Apostate. What on earth is an apostate?
Apostate. It's when someone goes away from a religion.
Is it really? I had no idea what that was like. I've never even heard the word before. No, and he mentions it as in Din Djarin actually mentions it in the show. And I thought, dude, I've got no freaking idea what you're talking about. But I'm glad you've clarified that. And of course, for those who don't know, we will be discussing spoilers, which is particularly cool. And of course, it's worth noting that what we do here on this show is we sort of we'll analyze the episode in detail. But of course, our focus is to look at both the positives and the negatives, things that work really well and things that we thought, kind of didn't work. So we're not here to necessarily sink the boots into it. If there are good bits, we'll say that there are good bits, and we'll say why there are good bits. It's all about saying if something works, why does it work? And if something doesn't work, why doesn't it work? And that's part of what we're all about. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron? All very exciting.
Well, it's been interesting coming back to the Star Wars universe because it's definitely a change in gears from when we've just the series we reviewed last, which was Andor. And I think in some ways, Mandalorian, it detracts from the Mandalorian coming straight after Andor. What did you think?
Yeah, that's a pretty good observation. And what I do is after the episodes come out, I go and look at what the fans, the review forums all have to say, and I pick up bits and pieces from that. And I've got a couple of quotes I'm going to bring up right at the very end of the series, as in this episode, regarding that. And a lot of people have said that they've almost been tainted by Andor, which was such a high quality show. But of course, Mandalorian is designed more for the general public, really. And it's what we class as the fluff show. If you will. It's just it's light and fluffy, easy entertainment. And I guess you've got to kind of see it on that level. If you're looking for deep and meaningful stuff, it's definitely not the kind of show you're looking for. Having said that, of course, there are some things that are like, oh, okay, I'd be curious to see whether that actually works for the public, and we're going to discuss that as we go along. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but apparently some big wig in Lucasfilm/Disney said this series is set 2 years after Season 2. Now, of course, the numbers of that doesn't really add up. Because when you sit and think about it, the only way that could work is if at the end of Season 2, when Grogu went off with Luke, when at the end of the credits, you remember, like Boba Fett goes back into Jabba's palace and shoots Bib Fortuna. If that was 2 years later, then it all works. But if that's not the case, and it was only a couple of weeks, and there's no way the time frame can actually fit together and saying it's now 2 years later, because it just doesn't seem to mesh up. So I don't know if you heard that one at all.
I didn't hear that. I wouldn't have thought that because it does seem to just flow on from what happened at the end of the Book of Boba Fett and also from Mandalorian Series 2. So I wouldn't have noticed a time jump.
Yeah, and I think the biggest concern is because it's not mentioned anywhere. Like it's not mentioned on screen or anything. So it's just some executive somewhere or some writer or whatever. So it's caused a bit of a furor for some people to say, well, hang on, until you mentioned on screen, that's just rubbish. But anyway, apparently, make of that what you will. So the funny thing is that, of course, it's been like a year or 2 years since Mandalorian was out, Season 2. They do a previously, right? Which is kind of groovy. It's like, oh, that's cool. A quick summary on all the things you've missed out on, which I thought you kind of needed. The problem was that you revisit the Book of Boba Fett episodes where Din Djarin appeared. And I thought, that's cool. You got to get up to speed with some Mandalorian culture stuff because he visits the armor and all this sort of bizzo. That's all groovy. Not a problem at all. But the big issue, of course, is the summary does not cover off how Din got his new ship, which you see in this episode, his N1 Naboo fighter, and of course how Grogu came back. That's not covered off at all. And I thought, if you were the general public watching the series, and a lot of people would be the general public because they love Grogu, they'd be sitting there scratching their heads going, where was this in season 2? So I don't know. I don't think the producers have done themselves a big favor in cutting that part out, because that's an essential part of what goes on. At the end of season 2, Grogu's gone with Luke. Start of season 3, he's back again. What have we missed?
Well,
And
I spoke to you about this and we had different opinions. I thought anyone who was going to watch Mandalorian probably watched the Book of Boba Fett. And even if they didn't, they would have heard the buzz that, oh, the Mandalorian was in it, and they might have watched those episodes. But you said, no, you didn't think people would have done that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people think that way. And of course, this is where you've got to divorce yourself from the fan view. A lot of people watched the original Mandalorian season, and were just people on the street, right? You've heard the, oh, Baby Yoda, all sort of stuff. They wouldn't have watched the Book of Boba Fett because Boba Fett was designed for hardcore fans, whereas this show is aimed at the general public. And I'll give you a very good example of that. I showed it to my other half, right? The moment Grogu turns up, she's like, oh my God, it's awesome, he's fantastic, it's awesome. The moment you get into the Mandalorian stuff, switched off completely. So, because it's not her thing. So it's an interesting sort of conundrum. And I guess some people will just say, well, we missed something. It really doesn't matter. Din's back, Grogu's back, everybody's happy. Very groovy. Now, where were we? So Christy's mentioned here, Andor was gritty and harsh, and it was. Mando is saying so clean it squeaks. Well, I guess it kind of doesn't in a lot of ways. And Dave, I think you're on the right track. I mean, yeah, there are hints that time has changed. And of course, that's with the Children of the Watch I'll bring up in a sec. But it does explicit grief. He's not. He's actually. It's GREEF. So he's not an unhappy guy. He's a happy guy. But yes, it does explain how Navarro has changed. So. Anyway, so very interesting. So I'd be curious to see whether the general public who watch this series get caught out or not. Anyway, past the previouslys, onto the current show, and away we go. All right, first thing I saw was, oh, mate, we're having a Mandalorian barbecue. Mate, those flames look pretty groovy. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, they do have those same flames in the Armourer's workshop in a couple of the earlier episodes too. So I did think it was interesting that you saw the skull in the background as well as the first sort of thing. That's a callback to Boba Fett more than the Mandalorian, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's true. And of course, you see the armor bashing the bejesus out of this piece of metal, which is kind of groovy. Zach has said, read that Dave Filoni said that it was a 2-year gap. And of course, yeah, it doesn't, the numbers don't add up. What they're trying to say is that Grogu was with Luke for 2 years. But of course, you're thinking, okay, did it take 2 years for Luke to finally say, well, here's your saber, here's your, what do you call it, your chainmail, pick one of the two. I don't know, it kind of doesn't mesh, does it? But you know, what the hell? I thought you were going to say something.
It's science fiction. Does it really matter?
Yeah, from my point of view, I would have thought, take one of the episode with Din Djarin finding out about Grogu, make that the premiere of season 3. At the end, he just gets Grogu back somehow or other, really, really quick, and we're off and running, and it would have saved everybody a lot of problems. But clearly, that's not how it worked out. I think the ship episode should have done in Mando. That's what I just said. Joe Public would think he just acquired a new ship. Exactly right. But the fact, I thought it was funny, in the previously, they go through the Mandalorian culture stuff, but they don't even mention about how Grogu returned. So I thought, that's kind of like a bit of a missing gap there. And that's a key one too. But there you go. Until the ship appeared, I thought it was a flashback scene here. We're going to cover off in a sec too, which is cool. Now, because at the start, got all the armor about to give a kid his helmet, right? And I thought, mate, I tell you what, there's obviously got budget cuts for the poor armorer, because it's like, and I mean, their helmets now are like repurposed Boba Fett toys. How dodgy did that look, dude?
I know. I agree with Christy. I actually thought it was a flashback until they showed the helmet, and then I was like, oh no, that is not the most popular looking helmet, is it?
No, I've got to say that looked really pox, and I agree with you. I thought it was very clever. They made it look like it was a flashback sequence, even though you had the armor, which you can accept, and Paz Visual, and go, okay, fair enough. And you're thinking that this is a young Din, and I thought that's very kind of works. But I thought it was kind of funny because, in the end, you say the Children of the Watch, they're a big group now. Now, you remember from Book of Boba Fett, the armor said there was only 2 of them, and when Din joined them, it was 3. Now there's like up to 50. So as to where all those other people came from is anybody's guess. And of course, they were stuck on Glavis, which was the ring planet from the Book of Boba Fett, and now they've ended up wherever. This is like a version of Tatooine with water. So I thought that was particularly interesting. So they have actually grown over this supposed 2-year period. So, yeah, what do you reckon?
It is one of those things where I thought it was a flashback because of the numbers, because I can't really see a lot of people picking up on the religion of never having, especially if they're already, adult, taking up on a religion where they put a helmet on and they never take it off again.
Yeah, recruiting would be awkward, and of course, you can't just find people on the street. They've got to be true Mandalorians, but Peter Petty. Yeah, it's sort of an interesting one. Where would those extra people have come from? And it did give the impression on the Glavis scenes from Book of Boba Fett that the armor was like, well, we're zealots, Paz Visual and myself. Everybody else, they're a bunch of tools, and then somehow or other, they've just got all these extra recruits, so including kids. So yeah, I don't know.
I thought she was gonna. I thought she was gonna tell the Mandalorian that the rules had been waived a little bit because they needed new recruits. But not, they're still this is the way. You've got to go and do this, or you're not a Mandalorian. So
totally agree with you. I like what Dave said here. Yeah, the COVID was a real 2-year gap. That's completely true too. And I got to say, I mean, look at this bad news kid. You know, I mean, Mandalorian helmets usually look really cool, but this one just looks rubbish, right? And you think, okay, you would have to assume that this is the child version, and then he can upgrade to the adult version later on. But of course, the way it's mentioned in the show is like once this goes on, it ain't never coming off. So I don't know where the logic of that was. It was just a bit of a funny scene. And of course, I found it interesting that when she puts the helmet on the kid's head, I thought, what if it doesn't fit? And as he gets older and his head expands, he's just going to go, oh my God, there's nowhere for it to go. So
I was watching that thinking it looked like Jango Fett cosplay at Halloween or something.
Yeah, I tell you what, unbelievable. So yeah, it's unusual. You think, okay, this is the best that the armor could bang out. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, there's obviously some logic behind it because you've got other kids there and they're wearing a similar style helmet, but just visually, it just looked awful. I mean, the thing about Mandalorian helmets is they always look groovy. You got the T visor, they look sexy, and this kid thing didn't. So when they hold it straight to the camera, and you just go, "Oh, dude, that looks pox." So anyway,
Dags, I don't know if they want to make a kid look sexy.
Yes, I like this one from Adzi. They all got eaten by a giant space crocodile. Well, you know things are going bad when you got an effing huge monster that just pops out of nowhere. And instead of everybody just running away, they go, "Yep, we're just going to fight it," and of course they lose. I thought this was a good sequence. It actually did quite well, and I did like the fact they couldn't destroy the crocodile thing, whatever it was. And I did like it when they stick all the cables into it. It just rolls over, and of course the cables are attached to their arms, and they roll with it. Oh, that was actually quite groovy.
I thought the whole sequence was good. The only thing I didn't like is there was no wave or anything in the water signifying a Godzilla-sized monster was coming up to them. You would think that something that size would displace the water, and even if it was in the background, give some kind of clue that it was going to be there. I guess it was a good dramatic sequence, and it looked really good. The CGI and mixed with the live action was really good on that sequence. It's just, I always think, and that's not just in this show. Whenever something that big comes out of the water, say what you like about the Hollywood Godzilla movies, at least when it was coming into New York, the water was rising and everyone on the pier is like, well, this is really strange. On this, it was one of those stealth monsters that manages to come quite shallow without anyone seeing it till it like jumps up and eats someone.
Yeah, it's not like a Jaws where you got a fin in the water or anything. So yeah, you're right. Considering its physical size, you think there would have been waves coming through initially, but it's obviously going for the swamp alligator crocodile scenario where they can just pop up out of nowhere and do their thing. But look, I thought it was quite good, and it was very interesting because you had the kid who's just got the helmet on. He's about to do something, and of course, Paz Vigilant, but just belts him out of the way. And I like his gun, the chain gun laser thing. That was actually very groovy. So didn't do anything, but it looked very good.
Yeah, it's all Hot Toys will make this. Oh, give them more accessories so we can have a different version with Hot Toys or action figures. Like toy companies love all that.
Oh yeah, it's just got merchandising all over it. So absolutely fantastic. Dave said, I think the armor could have even been a threat, a possible bad guy, I mean bad girl. Yeah, I suppose. Jeffro, this is the way where we've sort of proven that this is the way it actually doesn't actually work. Yeah, where's Steve Irwin when you need him? Yeah, that wouldn't have worked out too good. And yeah, right. As we were saying, yeah, crocodiles can sneak up, and just it worked for the sequence, and at least they had a sense that something was coming. Yeah, exactly right. Now, the funny thing I thought with all this pandemonium going on, I thought, what happens if someone's helmet falls off accidentally? The whole Creed thing, your helmet never comes off. So if their helmet came off like the armorer's helmet came off here, does she suddenly get booted out of the group because it's like, well, you kind of lost your helmet, even though it wasn't by choice? Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting, but of course it didn't. Everybody was sort of happy and good, but otherwise, good sequence.
I've only seen the episode twice, and I didn't check because I didn't know you were going to ask that. When they put the helmet on, is there hermetically sealing sound like when Vader's helmet? So maybe that's why they don't fall off so easily.
Yeah, they took a whole lot of sound effects from the original trilogy and all the movies, and they added them in various places in the show.
Yeah.
And the helmet, when it went on, it did make a sound effect, and I did see it and I did hear it, and I thought, oh, I know what that is, and I've just gone completely blank. I think it's from Empire or something, where something seals up, which is kind of funny because there's nothing for it to seal to, unless it just goes under the chin and it's like, what's it? It's not coming off. But yeah, they did put that sound effect in. Maybe it was intentional. So first time we've ever heard it. So either that, or it's because it's going on the kid. It's their way of saying, kid, you're not getting this thing off for love of money. Deal with it. So because you put on the kid and he goes, oh, I can't breathe in this thing. I can't see a thing into this. It's not coming off.
If they can't take their helmets off, how come they don't all have massive facial hair and like look all white and crusty because they don't come out in the sun and stuff?
Yeah, you do wonder. That's why I thought it was so funny that Din Djarin always had a mustache. And I go, what have you got a mustache for, dude? No one ever sees your face. But anyway, Gavin has said, was the Croc a baby or an adult? I don't know, actually, but it was pretty tough stuff. And a few people have mentioned it. You think all of our heroes would have just run away and said, nah, too big, fight another day. But no, they took it on and kind of lost until our hero turns up. And this is obviously what links it into the present time. So Din turns up with the cash cow, and we have to say that because Grogu is the cash cow. And I thought, we're all Pedro Pascal. He's being typecast. All he's ever doing is working in shows where he's looking after children. So if you've ever seen the TV show The Last of Us, he's also looking after a kid. So whether it be Grogu or the girl from Last of Us, he just can't get away from children. Children. What do you reckon?
I think a lot of people have mentioned that. I mean, he does have a bigger body of work, but this is the two franchises that he's most known for now, isn't it?
I know. I just thought it was so ironic because he must have thought, I'm in The Last of Us. Awesome. I'm in a zombie show. I don't have to wear helmets. It's awesome. And they go, okay, here we go. Here's a kid. Look after the kid. I go, oh, not another one.
What's her name? Mrs. Grogu.
Yeah. I've always liked the fact that people have said that Grogu is a terrible name, and it is a terrible name. But for all we know, in their language, Grogu could be the equivalent of John. So, if Grogu could speak, he'd probably saying, hey, stop picking on my friggin' name. There's nothing wrong with it. So
Yoda and Grogu are like John and Tim or something like that, aren't they?
Yeah, I love it. David said, I like this helmet as a secret chin strap. The old secret chin straps thing. Yeah, I love that. It connects underneath, except for a good old Django because his head had to fall out after he got decapitated. What if Mando, or any of the Mandalorians, you can't just say one, there's a whole bunch of them now, gets a cold? Imagine sneezing inside the helmet and go, you're just trying to wipe it from the inside.
Well, that's a scene from Morons from Outer Space. I don't know if you've seen that, where he sneezes inside the space helmet and then can't clear it. So,
yeah, you need wipers on the inside. Unbelievable. So Gavin said there must be exceptions to the rule of the helmet, and there is, because in the first season of Mandalorian, in that big sort of like village, he's inside and his helmet is actually sitting on the table. So now maybe this is before they instigated all these crazy rules. And I do think that in private you can, right? I mean, in front of other people you can't. I mean, but there's got to be exceptions to it. You can't just leave the thing on forever. So, anyway. So
what if you need to go to the dentist?
Yeah, well, that's right. Even what's the name? The armourer says, well, you took it off, and you took it off by choice. So if someone else rips it off your head, like you tie down and someone takes it off, I guess that's a get out of jail free card. But you do wonder what the deal is. All right, so this is where it gets a bit cockeyed. So the armor and that, they're doing their thing. Din's turned up, and you go, well, why did he come back? Because the last time we saw him was on Glavis, right? That was when Paz Vizsla was there. It was just her and him. And they said, okay, you're not a Mandalorian anymore. You got to bugger off back to Mandalore, jump into the waters under the mines or whatever. And you go, okay, fine. And then he comes back and they repeat the entire conversation again. And a few people said, why have you done that? It's like, aside from the extra bit with the kryptonite, which I'll show in a moment, we've actually covered this off. And it's actually covered in the previously recap. You've got to go to the waters under the mines or wherever on Mandalore. And they come back and they have exactly the same conversation. So that was kind of cockeyed. Now, I know why they've done it, for people who didn't see the Book of Boba Fett, but it's still illogical. So you've had this chat, you come back later on, and you have the same chat again. So how did you find that?
Yeah, I like you said, I think it was just for people who didn't pick it up on the Book of Boba Fett, but because they put it in the previously trailer, they didn't need to go over it. I think it is one of those things where the Mandalorian, they've got the mythology now and they're just reinforcing it over and over. So whenever she turns up, they'll probably drop new things about the creed and what they have to do. Also, because this was called Apostate, I guess it was reinforcing that he was still outside the order and not in the order anymore, and had a series of things to do before he could return to the order.
Yeah, so it works for this show, but it doesn't work if you've seen the Boba Fett series, because it's like we're just covering in the same territory. And after that, it was pretty clear: don't come back until you've been in the waters of whatever you bathe in the waters of Mandalore or whatever. And you go, all right, fine, cut and dry, nothing, no problems about that. And for some reason, he's decided to come back and repeat the conversation. It's just, yeah. Anyway, they mentioned the creed is the helmet can't come off when others are around in private. Anything goes, which is kind of funny because we always saw that Din never took it off in his own ship, even when Grogu was there, right? Okay, maybe he said, okay, Grogu, turn around when I've got to have a shower. Yeah, it's a bit
I'll
weird,
tell you what, the creed is just like the Ferengi rules of acquisition. Whenever they need another one, they just pull it out of their ass, don't they? It's
exactly
like,
right.
we'll write it as we go along. Are you alone if there's a droid with you? Do they count as a sentient life form, or are they just a piece of machinery? You just don't know.
You would think you couldn't do it in front of a droid, because a lot of people do class them as sentience. And of course, we discovered that later on with good old IG-11.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a bit weird. It's a bit bizarre, but what the hell? Anyway, so Din came back, had a chat about what's going on with the waters of Mandalore. I love this one. I thought it was Mandalorian kryptonite. It's always got to be green, which I thought was kind of cool. And this is reinforcing the fact that Mandalore did get kind of bombed quite unhappily. And of course, you've got to have your obligatory Grogu shots in the background there, the cash cow doing what he's got to do best and bringing the money. So that was very, very groovy. And of course, he features again when you're seeing the old Purgles, the hyperspace whales, and good old Grogu's checking those guys out. And of course, these things first appeared in Rebels. It was a very nice moment, which I thought was kind of cool. And of course, it just goes to show that he can sneak in from his little hole up the top and become Din's pet dog. Just have a bit of a cuddle. And I tell you what, I reckon the audience's hearts were melting, because my other half watched this and she goes, "Oh, that's so cute." And I go, "Yep, that's exactly what it's meant to do."
Just think, R2-D2 could have crawled in there and had a cuddle with Anakin whenever he wanted.
See, that is an action figure in the making. Din, even though it looks like he's died, but he's asleep. It took me a while to work out. I was like, why is he like that? Oh, he shouldn't. It needed the old cuddling Grogu, and I thought, very clever.
Yeah.
So
the other thing I liked, which was when they're talking about the bombing of Mandalore, they said the whole surface was bombed to glass, basically. So the whole planet, they couldn't get to the waters because it's underneath in the area was at the mines where the surface area was bombed to glass. So that's how severe the Empire destroyed the planet.
Which we also got to see in the Book of Boba Fett, which was very, very groovy. So be curious to see what happens when he eventually gets there. Adzi made a point about saying that, he's not to be seen by others. Yeah, I think we've sort of worked that out in private, like real private, he can take it off. But it's always been given the impression that once it's on, and by the armorer, which the way she says it, she says, it's on, ain't coming off. It's not like it's on, but you can only take it off under these conditions. It gives the impression it's very much a done deal.
Do you know the simplest way to get around that? Just lie to the armorer. Nah, I never took it off.
Oh, this is the way. Just telling Porky Pies. Absolutely fantastic. I like this one. Adzi, what about Mummy and Daddy Mandos to make baby Mando? Jesus. Crikey, they get their antennas entwined, and what can I say? Very good. And what they're trying to do is genetically engineer it so when the baby comes out, the helmet's already on the kid. So how good is that? What does it look like? No freaking idea. He's had a helmet on since day one. So absolutely love it. So yes. Yeah. I thought that the space whales were a nightmare, hence this cuddle time. You know what? It's a smart that's a logical thing to say, because when you see them, you go, well, what is that? Is that a threat? And of course they're not. And there's actually a background story as to what a Purgle is and how hyperspace was discovered and all this sort of stuff. But when you first see that, you go, is Grogu thinking, mate, one, he can eat them, because you know what he eats live animals, or is he afraid? But they're not meant to be, they're not a fearsome creature. So that is interesting. It'd be like the audience be going, is that going to attack us or eat us? Or because there's always a bigger whale, as you know.
Well, Purgle actually sounds like something more from Harry Potter than Star Wars, but there is the precedent of stuff living in hyperspace, because in Solo we saw, when they go off the hyperspace thing, that giant octopus type thing that lives in the vacuum as well.
Yeah. So stuff like that is for the fans, even though if you've never seen Rebels, you wouldn't know that. And for the general public, they'll be going, oh, hang on, is this thing going to come and attack us later on? I don't know. But what we do now know is that Grogu can get from his little hidey hole at the top. and crawl through, which is kind of a little bit dodgy. And where does he pop into the cockpit and snuggle up with Dinny Boy, and we're good to go. And I like the fact that in the show they reinforce the fact it is Din Djarin. They mentioned it about 3 or 4 times in the show, so he's not Mando, because you can't say Mando anymore because you got Paz Vizsla, you got Bo-Katan, you got the Armor, you got the Kid, you got all these other dudes. We've got to be a bit more specific now. Din Djarin, so there's no D in the pronunciation.
And the other thing, I always watch it with the subtitles on just to make sure I don't get anything wrong. In the first 2 series, was there an apostrophe in Din Djarin?
No.
Or have they changed that? That's
No,
this
there's never
series.
been one.
This
But
series there is.
I'm sure the first time they ever mentioned his name, like he mentioned it, was Djarin, because the D's. Yeah. So now the D is silent. So I'm not sure. That's what I remember. I thought, oh, it's Djarin, because when you first see it, DJ, whatever, and you go, oh, that's weird. Anyway,
lots of clanking in the bed. If the helmets are knocking, don't. If the helmets are
knocking, don't. Good on you. I like this one from Williams from Star Trek. There be whales, Captain Ish. Yeah, exactly right. It did look good. It was a nice little moment. Very groovy. Once again, more shots of Grogu, and he looks cute as always. The cash, you just hear the cash's registers going ching 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 ching. All right. Speaking of ching 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 ching, we get to Navarro, and guess what? Navarro now looks like Galaxy's Edge. We're in Disneyland.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people say that. Like, it is one of those interesting things where something's changed with the production, because they even do a little in-joke where the Mando says, oh, this looks different. And it, for me, is one of the things that really annoys me. If someone buys an expensive TV and then they have the setting on that videoizes everything, so you watch a movie and it looks as clear as an episode of Friends because it's adding frames in to sort of compensate. And this isn't the same thing, but it does look like the stock or whatever their filming has changed between series. And I did think whatever they'd done, it made it look, like you just said, like Disneyland rather than an alien planet. I thought it looked cheaper. I don't know if they're not filming on the volume as much and they're filming on location and adding stuff, but whatever they've done, the tone of the show felt different because of it to me. And it wasn't a good change.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you. But now that you brought it up, yeah, it seems a bit more brighter, I guess. And I don't know, I tend to agree with you, but I hadn't really thought about it. It does look different. And I think if you look at the previous series, maybe it's meant to imply subconsciously that it's the happier world now, right? And it's the world is good. And especially at this place, Navarro, previously you had all the fights and the wars going on. Now it's all happy and joyful and wonderful. You got the trees and you got all the people. And
they've changed
even
the
these guys.
They've changed the pubs into schools. I mean, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, exactly right. You got to see whether these guys ended up, these Qualky and monkey lizard dudes ended up in the spits that we saw just prior to this, actually. Because I did like the fact that we're looking from Grogu's point of view. He's looking at this, he's looking at that, he's looking at this. But yeah, Navarro is a completely different place. Whether it works or not and fits the narrative, I don't know. But
for me, I liked the first time you saw them, they were on spits being eaten, and seeing it where they're in trees. I don't know. I think they've softened the whole series. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's intentional, because the past 2 seasons have been about Din trying to handball Grogu off back to his people. And we've finished that, and now Grogu's come back and he's just going to be Din's adventures with his pet dog. And I guess they've just changed the style of the entire show. But there's going to be a trade-off for that, as I'll discuss later on, as to whether that's going to work or not. And but we won't get ahead of ourselves. Chrissy said the D could be his middle and initial. Yeah, maybe. And as I said about Purgles, will probably turn up on Ahsoka. Yeah, probably will too. So it was a nice little moment, and away we go. So IG-11 has now been made into a statue in the center of town, which is kind of bizarre. And I did think, for those who've ever seen the series Caprica, which is probably nobody, memorial statues for robots have actually been done before. And I thought this is kind of groovy. Now, what's interesting, of course, is that he wants to bring IG-11 back, but historically, Din never liked robots, never liked droids. He didn't trust them. So he's had a complete role reversal or an about face saying, oh, no, I want this one returned. Even though even as everybody else seems to say, get another robot. Surely you can do the job. It's just a programming that he's working with, not necessarily the individual. So anyway.
I did think it was weird. I thought he just got melted in a lava flow. I didn't think there was anything left.
Yeah, you did think that, eh? It just goes to show in the Star Wars universe, nothing's ever truly dead. I like
melted and self-destructed.
I know. Yeah, they can still put him back together, eh? And I did like the fact that Grief said, hey, mate, it's a statue. What are you looking at? Turning a hive of scum and villain into a school appropriate. Well, there are certainly some schools that are probably the exact equivalent of a hive of scum and villainy. So, yes. You do wonder, but yeah, IG-11 being made into a statue. Okay, we didn't necessarily see that coming, but there you go. Anyway, Grief returns, Grief Karga, which is particularly cool. What I did like is they covered off in their discussions what happened to Cara Dune and Moff Gideon. I thought that was important. So Cara's been taken off to some intelligence group, some spy thing, and Moff Gideon's been prosecuted by somebody, New Republic somewhere. I thought that was at least good that they covered that off, because there's nothing worse when you have characters who have left for whatever reason and they've just never discussed them ever again. So I thought that was kind
Cara
of cool.
Dune went back to her own planet with Poochie. What I did think was a bit ridiculous, you're getting to the level of fashion that you had with Padme. Do you really need droids following you around, holding your cape so it doesn't drag on the floor? Get a shorter cape.
You know what? There would be people within the Star Wars universe, saying, all free rights for droids. Remember the one in Solo that ended up being in the Millennium Falcon had this whole thing about, droids need to be protected. Imagine if that droid, whose name I can't remember, saw these two guys carrying around Grief's cape. You go, oh man, that's exploitation of droids. You're a bastard.
I wonder who'll be the first person to cosplay that and have the droids, as part of the costume, carrying it around.
Love it. Gavin said no trendy, colourful Vespa speeder bikes. Actually, they would have suited this town quite nicely. Thank you very much. So, yes. This is interesting. Amongst all the fluffy talk, we do get some serious stuff. Grief doesn't not want to be affiliated with the New Republic. Now, you remember from our perspective, the audience, the New Republic are the good guys, right? They were the Rebel Alliance. Now they've sort of turned into the government. And you do wonder, he just doesn't want another bureaucratic system taking control of Navarro. And of course, if he thinks this way, how many other systems think the same way? So even though the New Republic are the good guys, and they stay the good guys up until at least Force Awakens, there are some systems who say, no, we don't want to be dealt with them. So you do wonder how the mindset behind that, because we all assumed, they'd all jump and sign up to the New Republic immediately, but clearly that's not the case. So I thought that was an interesting line.
I think you've got to remember the old Republic went rotten from the inside and changed, and then you had the Empire. You'd probably want a lot of planets that just wanted to be independent.
Yeah. And of course, they've had their time in the Empire. For all we know, they didn't like the Republic before that. I mean, Tatooine was a good example. The Republic doesn't exist out here. The Empire took over. So whoever's in control of Tatooine, they may go, we don't want to join the New Republic either. So, just because you've changed governments from the bad guys to the good guys, it doesn't mean that all the systems are going, yep, we're going to sign up straight away. Okay, thank you, Daniel. Off with Special Forces L3. That's right, I couldn't think from Solo. It should be a tad, as in the droid L3 would be a tad miffed that these guys are carrying around Grief's cape. But I agree with you. That's kind of dumb, isn't it? It's so long, it's dragging. He doesn't want it to drag on the ground. I know it's
it says to me a costume designer had a joke and someone ran with it and they actually put it into the production.
And they can do that because if they had some organic creatures doing it, like small Ugnaughts or even the Babu Frick guys that we see later on, people go, "Oh, that's mistreating, minority and ethnic groups and all this sort of stuff." So use droids. No one's going to complain about that.
Droids. Yeah.
For whatever reason, there's this whole big scene about buying land, right? Set the guy up out in the sticks somewhere. I like the term belters, right? That's straight out of The Expanse for anybody who's seen that. And it was just a long bit. It was like, okay, Mr. Din, buy some land, settle out there with Grogu, and you're good to go. And I thought, I don't understand what the point of that was. It just seemed to be a tad bizarre.
A lot of our episodes are belters, but I think again it was almost like looking over Galaxy's Edge. A lot of the architecture. I don't know if at the end of this series Disney is going to announce they've changed the outposts at Galaxy's Edge to the Mandalorian, for a couple of years or something like that. Because, but it did seem to me, this is really tying in with the look of Galaxy's Edge, and they're going to change it, and it's sort of encroaching on the story, which I don't like.
Yeah, it's certainly dropping those hints, isn't it? So they showed enough of all these like little things, like we saw with the Quelkian, the Salacious Crumb, Quelkian, monkey lizard dudes, and all these other things, and the guys playing the band. You could easily shove those into Galaxy's Edge, and it's like straight out of it, as seen on TV. Right.
Disney is smart that they do update their, their rides and stuff, so they stay fresh and people go back. But when you're looking at a scene like the one with Babu Frick, and you go, oh, do you know what I'm going to do? There's a droid factory where you can go and build your own droids in Galaxy's Edge. They're going to close that for a month, and it's going to come back with all these animatronic Babu Fricks, and it's going to change from the Jawa sandcrawler to the Mandalorian. And I'm thinking, I bet that's going to happen, you know?
Yeah, very few times these things just happen by accident. A lot of things are pre-planned, and if you sow the seeds early enough, you can like pay dividends much later on. I hear you, dude. I'm completely with you. All right, so we have the issue with the pirates, right? So first thing I thought of, okay, I mean, you think they just push past the droid. I mean, who's afraid of a droid? And he's actually saying to it, stand aside. It's like, oh, dude, it's even a protocol droid. It's not even a real droid like an IG-11 or anything like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, yes.
Yes.
Very good. And we finally get to see some aliens. So he's got this dude here, Vane. And remember, a lot of fans were not happy that there weren't many aliens in Andor. Now we've got stacks of them in this show. So that should shut everybody up and keep them all nice and quiet, even though he's just got to get past the protocol droid. And I thought, okay, they've just shot all the dudes outside the school. What if the lunch bell goes and all the kids come out and see all these corpses everywhere?
Yeah. Well, it is one of those things. They need the corpse picker-upper to come through and sweep it all up. Again, you knew that those aliens didn't pose a threat. If you were looking at the first two series of Mandalorian, the aliens were tough. They went down harder. This one, you knew, even though they're meant to be the pirates and the hard people of the system, you knew they weren't going to pose a threat at all, which really undermined the drama for me.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the predictability of a lot of these series. You go, oh, okay, so it's Vane versus Grief Karga. What are the chances that Grief's going to get a laser bolt in the middle of his head? 0. What do you reckon the chances are that Din is going to get a bolt in the middle of his neck? 0. What are the chances that all the pirates are going to get killed except for the main guy? 100%.
Even in the book of Boba Fett, where you had them going out and killing the people who were on the moisture farms and stuff like that, it was a lot harsher. This was not that same level.
And unfortunately, we've seen the draw thing before. So if you remember the Mandalorian season 2 with I think it was him versus the Marshal, in Michael Bean's character, and they did the whole thing with the drawing. And okay, we've been there, done that, and even with Cobb Vanth and all that sort of stuff. So it's just like it's getting a little bit worn out, especially when you know what the end result's going to be. Dave, you're on the right track. Bring out your dead. Absolutely. And at least they did mention it. Like I like a Grief and they just walk away, but they did at least mention to the droid, bring out the cleaners, get rid of the bodies. Because I was wondering if they're just going to leave them there. It was like, okay. But no, they at least put that in. Hopefully they did that on the day of filming. They didn't think about it in the editing. They go, oh, we didn't think of this line. It was like they just left all the corpses in the street.
Well, maybe this is echoing Lando Calrissian, where he started out as a smuggler and a swindler, and as soon as he was at Cloud City, he's got to worry about taxes and like everything like that. And this is what's happened. It does water down the character. Lando had his wardrobe, and now Grief has his wardrobe too. It does echo it a bit, but it doesn't make it better, I don't think.
The question will be whether Grief, once his power starts to get larger and he starts to sort of like extend his influence, whether he stays a good guy or whether he does get corrupted by the amount of power and the authority that he's got. Because in the beginning he was a bad dude. Remember, he was handing out all the bounties, right? So he was never been a good guy his entire life. He's actually got a dark side to him. So you do wonder if he gets that much power, will he end up saying, well, there's a colony over there that's doing some really good stuff. Let's just go and send some guys over there. We'll just take that over. And he ends up becoming a warlord by default. So, I don't know.
It is one of those things I hate, not just in the Star Wars franchise, but all franchises, that they can't leave popular bad guys villains. After a couple of years of being popular, Venom has to be a good guy. Harley Quinn has to be a good guy. It would be nice if they just stayed, cynical villains and were infamous rather than, reformed. So that kind of happens a lot.
So how it would work in this story, if that was going to do that. So after all the show's finished and whatever else, Din comes back to Navarro. Grief said, there's your plot of land. Be the marshal, put the badge on, you're a good guy, right? And he was walking around, he's a cool dude, protecting the world from pirates. Then all of a sudden, Grief says, I got some dudes over here. I need you to take care of them. And yet they're innocent people. They haven't paid their taxes on time, right? That's sort of mindset. Go up there and rough them up a bit. And then that brings the dark side of Grief back. Now, of course, they won't do that because it's a kids show and it's a light and fluffy. But if you were going to sort of like make it more true to life, that's possible. Not saying it would, but that's possibly what could happen. So, but you are right. I hadn't thought of it. Grief and Lando are almost identical, even down to the capes. So, yeah.
Listen to this. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, from Colin, who's just become the president of the Star Trek Club.
Good observation. Okay, very good. Love it. Now, okay, so we've got the IG-11 storyline, which when you sit and think about it, doesn't make a great deal of sense. Just plug him back in, away you go. I like it. He goes complete full TA100, and he even uses the word terminated. I couldn't believe it. He's crawling across the floor trying to get Grogu, and they realise afterwards, oh, yeah, he's just defaulted back to his original programming. And, of course, when they drop the thing on the statue on his head, and you go, oh, that's now using your head. Oh, God. Is that the best the writers can come up with?
I know this first episode was a bit of a letdown from the first 2 seasons, and they did try to do the Terminator thing where you had it like crawling like after Sarah Connor, but it just didn't look as good. I don't know what the problem was. If the I guess it was a puppet they used. I don't think it was CG. Just didn't come across as well. Or it wasn't shot from the right angles. It didn't come across as threatening. And then you have a protocol droid doing that to finish it off. I was like, no. It is one of those things where there may be fan service, but gone too far.
I look at it from the point of view that they've looked at other movies and franchises. Oh, that's a great idea, right? And as I said, I can only work with how my other half reacted, right? So she's not a hardcore fan, and she went, "Oh my God, quick! It's going to save the day and save the kid." And I like the fact he chucks the kid over to grief. And I think if you do a freeze frame, and it's clearly a doll. It's not even a real puppet, but it's a mild threat. It's clearly designed for young kids to get, "Oh my God, this is scary." Whereas adult viewers just go, "We've seen that, been there, done that," and of course, clearly nothing's going to happen to Grogu. So, anyway, it was an unusual sort of sequence, but yes, I like it. Yeah, even said it terminated. Absolutely love it. I like it. Needed the whirring sound effects to fully sell it. Yeah, I tend to agree. It certainly didn't look good. Yes, I agree. The puppet was something was just not completely right. Good stuff. All right, so here's now this is a question for everybody who's watching this right now. Okay, this is a very important question. I want your feedback. What do you call a collective of Babu freaks? I reckon this was a bit of a moment. Hey, they go, "Oh, we're going to bring this dude back in," and
all the ones that come to my head, I can't say because they're too rude.
It's the word "frick" is a little bit iffy, isn't it? So, but I thought it was kind of cool. You know, okay, these little dudes, and I like the fact that it's echoes of Luke in Yoda's hovel, and it's like, how lucky is it that there's like this thing's got a really, really high roof.
Well, I don't know anyone who has been to Galaxy's Edge. There is a droid shop where you put your droid together, and I was like, oh, they cleaned that out and they filmed that there or something. It looks very, very similar. That's why I think, oh, this is the next Disney attraction that they're going to open up. You know, come and see the House of Frick. Welcome to the House of Frick.
I love it. Yeah, the frickin' hells and the frickin' fricks. And I agree with Christy. Yeah, nothing you can be said in a family setting. So there you go. Was it a collective noun? I can't even. Okay, yeah, right. I'll go with that. So, superfluous aliens. I remember the worms from Men in Black. Yeah, exactly right. Look, it was very cute that they brought them in. I can't remember the race's name, but the gag is that after all this mucking around, Babu Frick says it can't fix it. Oh, hang on, we can fix it. You need a part, right?
Yes.
And of course, that straight away means good old Din's back on a video game quest. It's like, we have been there, done that. And like, really? Is like, he needs this droid. Can't be any other. It's got to be this one.
Well, the thing for me, I don't know if they'll do it. Will they go and he'll have to get IG-88 for parts?
I don't know. But I did like in the sequence where Grief is outside and he's translating. I thought that was a good moment, right? Because Babu's saying his bit, Grief's translating, and Din's inside going, yeah, I understand. That I thought worked. Look, I didn't mind this, but I didn't like the fact that it says, yeah, we can fix him. We need a bit. And then Din said, I'll go and get the bit, right? Most other people just go straight down to the local Tandy or J-Car or whatever, get the bit. But no, got to fly away and get a bit. So all this effort, just so he can get IG-11 working so they can go to Mandalore. I was like, oh, yeah.
I think, Moneybags will know because he's the encyclopedia of Star Wars, but I think the IG units were made by Holowan Laboratories, and when on activation, they killed all the scientists. So the ones that they made first up are the only ones that exist.
Depends if that's a canon reference or not. So it's not canon then, because originally the IGs there was a whole army of them. And
but the thing is, it's not canon until they just mention it again, and it is canon again. You know,
that's right.
That's the way it kind of works with the Disney universe. Oh, we've erased all of this. Oh, we like Thrawn, so we'll bring him back. You know, so
yeah, exactly right. So Chrissy said that the puppets and the the special effects were jarring, and of course that led straight into effectively this bit. about Grogu wanting to slam down and chow down or capture or do whatever with Mr. Babu. And clearly this is the joke bit. And what I thought was interesting is that Grogu hasn't done anything for the entire episode except look cute in his close-ups.
Yeah.
And of course, that brings in the money, the ching, right? But finally he gets to do something because throughout the entire episode, he hasn't done a thing. And of course, at the moment, there's no threat to him because in the previous 2 seasons, everybody's been chasing Grogu because they want his midichlorians probably for this reason, what the reason he's a hunted character. Now he's not. No one cares about him anymore. He's just been forgotten. So he's almost like someone has said, just put in a close-up of Grogu. We just kind of need it for the kids. The kids watching the show are going to love it. It brings in the money. But at the moment, he's got no purpose. And I think that's an interesting sort of problem to have. To say, well, you need him, but you don't need him at the same time. And I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to have to create a threat to him. Otherwise, he's just the pet dog, as we said.
Try and put all of the Star Wars elements that are for plush toys in the one scene. So have an Ewok, Grogu, a Porg, all of those things, just to overload it with cuteness. But at the moment, there's really, you're right. He's not training, is he? He's not doing anything. He's just sort of hanging around.
Superfluous, and they do put shots of him looking at things and reacting, and it's all cute and wonderful, but it's not serving any purpose in the end. So Daniel did say the IGA line, but it's not canon, so that's what I thought initially. So very good. I like that. Whether or not IG units made by Hasbro in canon originally, but exactly right. Very, very cool. Yes, he used the Force to put the spin in the chair, which was once again my other half laughed her head off. Oh, that's so cute. Yeah, whatever. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. Mouse. You can almost imagine in the writer's room, they've said, you know what, there's every 2 minutes, there must be, like underline, must without capital letters, must be a close-up of Grogu so kids don't forget that he's there. Even if he's not doing anything, right? Even if he's just turning his head from there to there, doesn't matter. Chuck it in. So, I like this. All right, so we're in the ship and we're flying off, right? Away we go. So who needs the visual dictionary when Din's just going to point everything out? This is for that, this is for that, this is for fuel, this is for this. Yeah, all good, wonderful, cooking on gas, right? Then we get the pirate attack. And I thought it was interesting, for those who know their expanded universe from the Dark Empire comics, Gorian Shard's ship looks a bit like the Eclipse Dreadnought, which I thought was interesting. So clearly the design was inspired from that. So, sorry, dude, did I cut you off?
No. It does look like that ship, but I'm sure you'll agree with me. Obviously, it's the Flying Dutchman because it's captained by Davy Jones.
Oh, you mean to say that guy? Yes. What are the chances? That's like, speaking of imitations, i.e. a ripoff, what is this? Who is this?
You know what it is? I've worked it out. It connects to the Creepshow universe. There's one of the little stories where Stephen King touches a meteor from outer space and it starts growing vegetation on him, and at the end of the episode he's totally engulfed. Everyone thought he shot his head off, but no, he became a pirate captain in the Star Wars universe.
I don't know what the deal was with that. Okay, so we got in the ship and there was a big space, and we obviously knew what the answer was going to be. Clearly Din's not going to blow up. End of premiere episode and he dies. That's not going to happen. And clearly it's designed to say, all right, Gorian Shard's going to be the next bad guy that he runs across. But yeah, they've just invented this dude who looks exactly like Davy Jones. Oh, yeah. What was the deal with that? He's obviously either he gets his spinach and he just can't get it in his mouth and it just falls over his face or what. I don't know. But,
yeah.
This one from Christy. Where's the weed whacker?
You've got something caught in your teeth. I think it's some spinach.
Oh dear, unbelievable. I like this. Regarding Grogu, it needs a line from Captain Kim. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Star Wars' version of Swamp Thing. So, it's if you analyze it too much, you can go, oh my god, that was pointless. You can see why they didn't need an action scene. Unless they've said, you know what, after Andor, which was a relatively actionless show, we need a lot of action. We need duels on the street. We need pirates getting killed. We need spaceship scenes. We just need stuff to happen. And they've chucked it all in. Whether it serves a purpose or not, I don't know. But, you got to laugh, don't you, when you see that? It's like, that's Davy Jones all over. So, yeah.
It actually has more in tone with something that might have turned up in the Clone Wars cartoons than I expected from the Mandalorian. Because if that had turned up in the Clone Wars cartoons, because of the media and it was a cartoon, I might accept it more. But having that, you're like, how does a species like that evolve? Like, what's the deal,
Yeah, and you got the guy Gorian Shard's yelling and carrying on like a pork chop, and just go, "Oh, dude, we've had that many bad guys in this entire series and other series. Just because you got the green spinach thing going on doesn't mean we're like, oh my god, you are frightening me. I'm scared out of my stylish yet affordable boots."
Yeah.
Clearly, that's not going to happen. But it works. It works for the audience and it works for the kids, and I get that because they see something they haven't seen before. It looks threatening, therefore, ergo, it's threatening. But in terms of fitting within the universe, it's a bit iffy. So,
yeah.
Very good. All right. So this is an interesting one I'm going to bring up. Lovely. Daniel was saying expecting Hondo to show up. A lot of fans have been waiting for Hondo to show up. And, of course, he hasn't arrived in live action yet. And, of course, he was a huge favorite of Clone Wars and Rebels. Let's see. We go. Oh, I like this. Popeye had the munchies. Yes, exactly right. Very, very cool. Now, this is an interesting one. All right. So Din still hasn't gone to Mandalore, but he goes halfway there. He ends up on a planet called Kavala, which is the home of Bo-Katan. Right. Now, I'm going to show you the picture in a sec. The problem I see with this series, and I saw this firsthand with my other half, right? Do the general public, the general viewers who are not fans, do they have any idea what all this is about, right? Now, once again, using Lynn, my other half, as an example, when Grogu was on screen, it's wonderful, it's fantastic, it's awesome, she loves it. We get to this and she just tunes out. I can see straight away she has no idea what this Mandalorian crap is all about, right? And it's almost like they're trying to do two stories in one. One is get the people on board, get the fans on board, get the audience on board with Grogu, but we've got to cover off this Mandalorian thing at the same time. And I don't think the two of them mesh. The Mandalorian culture stuff is a little bit too complicated. If you've never seen the Clone Wars, it'll make no sense to you. There's a lot of words to digest. There's two people talking, and I think a lot of people, especially a lot of children, are just going to tune right out. They go, mate, give me the kid. It's almost like Grogu needs his own show, right? The Adventures of Grogu, and they just focus on him and he does stuff. I don't know about you. Do you feel that way? Because I certainly do.
Yeah, you can just imagine those sort of 5-minute Disney shorts where he chases a frog around and then eats it at the end in different funny things. That's the Grogu show for you. This scene, thought it looked fantastic. The location was great. But would she really just be sitting there all day on a throne doing nothing? I thought that was a bit at odds with the character of what we've known before too.
I totally agree with you. Christy has said that she's a fan and her eyes were glazing over. I get it. I really do. And I think if there's going to be an issue with this season, that's it. That it's too fan orientated, not too general viewer / public orientated. And it could lose people for that. Hence the reason every 2 minutes, close up at Grogu, close up. So people just go, oh, I can see that. I'm not listening. What's going on? And it could be a problem. Now, you are right. Bo-Katan's sitting on the throne. How's this for a line, right? She's lost her authority because she's lost the Darksaber. Wave that thing around. That's a very suggestive line when you sit and think about it, right? Just wave that thing around and they'll all follow you. I thought, okay, fair enough. But we could see what's happened. She's lost the Darksaber and everybody's just bolted. So ultimately, Din has all the power. So in universe, it makes sense as to what's happened. But I agree that she's just sitting there doing nothing. I don't know. Interesting.
It is. I guess the one thing, I know you are not big on watching trailers and stuff. The trailer they cut together for Mando Series 3 made it look like the best and most exciting series. So maybe it's just a slow burn to get started and setting everyone up. That's what I'm thinking at the moment and hoping it sort of goes in a better direction from after this episode.
Look, you're probably right. And I think people who really dial into the Mandalorian culture stuff will probably really get a lot out of it. But because this show is aimed at two audiences, as opposed to, say, Andor, which was specifically for the fans, not the public, but this show is aimed at both the fans and the public, they could be finding, we're in a really tight battle here trying to get people to understand what's going on without losing them. So the last thing you want is for people to say, I love season 1 and 2 better because Grogu was the focus, but now he's not the focus. Din and the Darksaber and the Mandalorian culture is the focus. Grogu is the pet dog going along for the ride.
Here's a question for you. Do you think this series would have been better if Grogu's story was over and he'd stayed with Luke and now it was another story arc without him in it?
Yeah, I did. And I said this like in the Boba Fett series. What needed to happen is Din to be on his own, to be thinking about Grogu to be thinking about him. And you can sort of mesh the two together. And they got that real distance connection thing going on. And at the end of this series, Grogu returns. But Din has to go through his Mandalorian stuff. But by the same token, would that have worked for the audience? I don't know, but I do think that at the moment, Grogu is clearly underutilized at this stage anyway. And as to whether the audience is going to follow the rest of the story, I don't know. And one of the things that does, I'll just get this through this. One of the things it does tell us is the logic of Mandalorians, all the fighting, all the factions, and in the end, what has got them? Absolutely nothing. So there you go. Sorry, dude.
Neither faction are on top. They're all gone, basically. But I think when we're reviewing this as fans, sometimes we can be tough on stuff because the first 2 series of Mandalorian were really, really enjoyable and really rewatchable. And I have to say, I liked Andor better, but I'd probably watch The Mandalorian over more just because it's more of that sort of exciting adventure series. So this series has a lot to live up to because there's 2 series of The Mandalorians, which sort of everybody loves, and then Andor that a lot of people loved. So this comes back and it's got a lot of high expectations to follow up. So maybe we are being a little hard on it after the first episode.
Yes, but no, because and I can, as I said, I can use the argument that I sat with a person who's not a fan and watched it, and she was just tuned right out. Only the Grogu bits were working, and I think the writers boxed themselves into a corner where they've resolved this issue, the Grogu storyline. Now they've got to go through the Djarin storyline, but that doesn't work for the general audience, the general public.
So let me ask you this:
if you lose some of them along the way. So, I understand where you're coming from, though. I really do. So, yeah.
Let me ask you this. When you were watching the first 2 series with Lynn, did she tune out on the episodes which didn't have a lot of Grogu in?
I can't remember. I just took it at face value for what it was, and I can see why it would work, and it was entertaining. At least you understood what the story was about. This is a lot more ingrained. So, Anyway, I don't know. So I could be proven wrong, and if I'm proven wrong, mate, it's all good. But I thought there's a lot of words here, a lot of people talking. I was like, oh my god, and there's a lot of stuff that if you don't know the background of it, you're going to be going scratching your head, going, I've got no idea what's going on. Anyway, wait and see what happens. I like this one from Christy. Christy, the Grogu versus Groot show. Yeah, love it. And you're right. It is turning into the game of Mando Thrones. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Now, the thing is, I read the reviews. That's the end of my pictures. I read the reviews from a lot of fans, and not all of them were in for it. Now, you got to remember, the Mandalorian series is the flagship show of Disney. Forget Boba Fett, forget Kenobi, forget Andor. This is the flagship. This is the one that brings in the fans, the money, the viewers, right? Above all else. And you are right. It has to work. It has to be the absolute pants, right? 2 quotes that 2 fans, I don't even know who these people are, have written. And I thought it was really interesting because I thought, I have my views, you have your views. What does everybody else think? Now, normally remember we discussed this during the book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian is the gush show. People just gush over it. It's the greatest show in the entire universe. It can do no wrong, or can it? First quote from a fan, and I'll read it out to you. This is based on this episode alone. Mando flies to the armorer and tells her what he's going to do. Mando flies to Navarro and tells Grief what he's going to do. Mando then flies to Bo-Katan and tells her what he's going to do. Roll credits. What the hell was up with that? And that wasn't me. That was someone else who wrote that, right? And of course, funny enough, someone had mentioned the things out of order. In the end, he should have gone to Bo-Katan first and then gone back to Navarro to tell, because he's going, apparently the thing seems to be edited backwards. And the second fan wrote this. I don't know who this person is. Jumping around with zero focus. I need to go there. Then I need to go there. Then I need to go there. Good luck. Jeez. How's that?
Well, I tell you, if this had been the start of the series and this was series 1 and they'd launched with that, a lot of people would not give it, as much leeway as I'm giving it because I hope it gets better. Everyone would have been, well, that wasn't what I expected. I guess because they've already got 2 years of goodwill, they can kind of do this and see where it goes to. I think now that Star Wars is a series and Disney's got it and we have a whole lot of different series on, it's a lot more disposable than it used to be. When there was just the movies, you'd go back and I'd watch the movies regularly. I do go back and watch The Mandalorian. I feel no need to go back and watch Obi-Wan, not feeling that for a while. Andor I will watch, but I'll give it a few years, but because I want to forget it and watch it again. Mandalorian is the Star Wars, the movies of the Star Wars where they want people to go watch it and watch it over. And we watched in the shop the first 2 series again today, all 8 hours of them. And they still held up really well. And this was a bit disappointing.
Yes. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Eh? So, yes, trying to maintain that level of expectation and enjoyment. So David mentioned that he thought that Grogu would have stayed with Luke and be gone. And I think a lot of people are starting to feel that way. And Gavin said, you put pictures up of Grogu around the place, keep him interested, have him carry a locket with the Grogu pic. This is an interesting one. So once again, I sort of read the reviews. I've got one last picture to show, and we're done. And Christy, get ready for your crimson yawns, please, when you get a moment. The more yawns, the worse it was. The less yawns, the better it was. This was interesting. On the same day that this episode came out, the Apostate, an episode of The Bad Batch came out on the same day. And you wouldn't believe it. Now, if I read this comment to you, guess how many fans thought The Bad Batch Metamorphosis was better than Disney's flagship show, especially as both came out on the same day? What do you reckon the answer to that question is?
80%.
A lot of people thought a cartoon, right, of all things, a cartoon for The Bad Batch was actually a better series or a better episode than what The Mandalorian was. And I was really surprised to hear that. Metamorphosis, by the way, was actually quite a good episode because it links right back to something that happens in the Clone Wars. But how's that? So people said, I love The Mandalorian, but this episode was better. And I thought, isn't that a telling sign?
Well, I had a conversation today, and I mentioned this to you before the show. Will this be the first year that Picard is better than The Mandalorian?
It's a shaky start. I mean, it may improve, but it's definitely a shaky start. So I don't know. But when a cartoon can beat your flagship show with Grogu in it, geez, I tell you what, that's not a good sign. I think people are saying, I want to like it, I want to love it, but it's not as good as what came before. So
don't you think if when he went and saw Grief, it was in the middle of sandstorms and he's saying, I'm doing my best, but it's still really hard. Can't you stay and help out as the sheriff? And the pirates are turning up at the school, and it isn't like an idealized version of the Star Wars, town. It would have just been more atmospheric and better.
Yeah, could be. So I don't know. But maybe it will improve and go places you never know. All right, so before I forget, before I get to Christie's Crimson Yawns, that's actually almost at the end of the episode. Now, if you haven't done so already, be sure to check on our socials for Sci-Fi Zone. I know it's been a couple of months since we've had stuff out, but there are things coming, so just keep your eyes open for that. And for all of your latest Mandalorian-related bits and pieces, make sure you go to Aaron's Collectibles. Isn't that right, dude? Give us a quick spiel about the store.
Absolutely. We actually just got a large collection of vintage carded, so vintage are the new series ones that look like the original Star Wars figures in. So they're going out, and Chad's listing them up on the site, and they'll be in the shop from today, actually. So we've got, quite a good range of figures at the moment if you are into collecting your Star Wars figures.
Very good stuff. All right, so regarding Christie's Crimson Yawns, remember, the more yawns, the worse it was. The less yawns, the better it was. We love Christy because she's really honest in her comments and statements. She's gone for the full 8 yawns. That is a 2 out of 10. Oh, my goodness gracious. I'm giving them room to be worse, but hoping it improves.
What would you give this one out of 10, Dags?
I certainly wouldn't give it a 2. I think that's probably a tad harsh. But look, it was all right. I don't know, 6 maybe. I got tainted by Andor because I loved Andor. This is as you said, it's disposable, but it's designed for a specific audience. I'm not the target audience. Things work, things didn't work, but otherwise, no, I don't know. It didn't really push my buttons. No.
I would give it about a 5 out of 10. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't as good as the last 2 seasons either, though.
There you go. Fancy that. We'll have to see how it all goes, but hopefully it will improve. And I do think, as I've mentioned earlier, they've stuck themselves in a bit of a corner. And we're going, hang on, we're doing Mandalorian stuff. Grogu's got to do something. So, even in The Bad Batch, they've realised, hang on, we've got to go back to the cash cow in that show, which is the girl Amiga, and they're now chasing her again, which I thought was quite interesting. But, Metamorphosis was a better episode of the 2 shows. They both came out on the same day. And, yes, you are right. Will Picard outstrip Mandalorian? Probably not in the eyes of the millions and billions of viewers, but the last thing that Disney/Lucasfilm want is for people to tune out of this show because they don't get the story. You can only have so many Grogu close-ups. People say, you know what, I'm over it. There's no threat. There needs to be a threat. And that's what made season 2 so good.
I could have done with Grogu staying with Luke and the Mando going out with R5D4 for this series.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, well, that's it for us. The next episode of Mandalorian comes out in a couple of days' time. We'll be back next Monday to review it. Hopefully it all sort of picks up, but hopefully you enjoyed our wafflings on.
Yep.
So there you go. Leave you to it. Any final words from you, Mr. Aaron?
No, just thanks everyone for supporting us and coming back. And we'll be here next Monday for episode 2.
Very good. All right, leave you to it, guys. Take care, enjoy, and party hard. Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.